If you're a college football fan that enjoys fun and isn't dumb enough to think that only SEC teams deserve a chance, you've probably been incredibly excited that we're about to see the first ever 12-team college football playoff. With that in mind, I decided it would be fun to bust out College Football 25, do a simulation, and see who the game thinks will win the College Football National Championship. Not much more than that, let's hop over to South Bend where Notre Dame leads Indiana 14-7 just before halftime. The Irish are driving deep in Indiana territory, 3rd and 5. Riley Leonard finds a receiver to get Notre Dame inside the 10. But it wouldn't be the ending to the drive they hoped for as Indiana comes up with the interception in the end zone. Indiana would not capitalize, but about halfway through the third, Curtis Rourke finds a man inside the Notre Dame 20, and the Hoosiers are knocking on the door. Despite the solid drive, Indiana is stifled and must settle for a field goal, and he misses the chip shot. Tough break for Kurt Cignetti and company. On the ensuing drive, after converting a couple of tough 3rd and 4th downs, Jadarian Price punches it in for the Irish to make it a 2-score game. Indiana looking at their last-ditch effort on 4th down, but the pass falls incomplete, and after a few garbage time touchdowns from each team, Notre Dame emerges victorious and will face Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. Over in Pennsylvania, SMU kicks a field goal to take a 10-7 lead just before the half, and the Nittany Lions are on upset alert. In the third quarter, SMU adds another field goal, and early in the fourth, Penn State is faced with a 3rd and goal, and Nicholas Singleton punches it in to give Penn State a 1-point lead. SMU answers with a field goal to make the game 16-14, and Penn State is on its last legs as the clock continues to tick. 45 seconds left in the game, and Penn State answers in a big way. Nicholas Singleton busts off a 40-yard walk-off touchdown run to send the Nittany Lions to the Fiesta Bowl. In Austin, Clemson is down 19 at the start of the fourth quarter in a game that looks to be over. Cade Klubnik finds Troy Stellato, the PI is on the defense, and Clemson is one step closer to being back in this game. And back in this game, they are 3rd and 1 from the 13 with about 6 minutes left, and Cade Klubnik finds Antonio Williams to bring the deficit to only 5 for the Tigers. And then Texas immediately answers with a 72-yard touchdown pass. And in what looks like the last chance for Clemson, they face 4th and a million from deep in their own territory, but TJ Moore beats everybody deep for the long touchdown pass that we can't even see on the replay. Thanks, goalpost. And in an even crazier twist, apparently Texas fumbles deep in their own territory, and that might just seal the deal on Clemson's massive comeback. 1st and goal, Klubnik finds TJ Moore to put the Tigers ahead. They get the 2-point conversion and complete the 19-point comeback to upset the Longhorns in Austin. Meanwhile, in Columbus, Nico finds a man in the end zone to bring Tennessee within 3 just before the half in a 10-7 ball game at the Shoe. After a 46-yard touchdown to Carnell Tate to go up by 10, the Buckeyes would score again to make it 24-7 and put this one on ice, coasting to a big rematch with Oregon, this time in the Rose Bowl. So just to recap, our round 2 matchups are as follows: Boise State, Penn State, Clemson, Arizona State, Ohio State, Oregon, and Notre Dame, Georgia. Not really any big surprises thus far with the exception of Clemson. While none of the other lower seeded teams escaped the first round, it is pretty wild that the 12 seed in the first ever 12-team playoff is still alive. But let's head to Glendale where the 6 seed Nittany Lions have put up 16 unanswered on the 3 seed Broncos, but the real Heisman winner, Ashton Jeanty, answers with a touchdown to get Boise State on the board. But at the end of the day, Drew Aller finds Julian Fleming to put this game on ice, and in what is probably the easiest section of the bracket, James Franklin has somehow not shit the bed yet, and Penn State is headed to the Final Four. In Atlanta, Clemson puts through a field goal to go up 24-7 just before the half, and this one was just never close. They make it 38-7, no looking back for Dabo and the Tigers, and the 12 seed continues their Cinderella run. In the Rose Bowl, Oregon and Ohio State are delivering on another Game of the Year contender, much like their first game earlier in the season. It's 20-20 with 2:42 left on the clock, and Ohio State gets stopped on 3rd and 9. They settle for the field goal to make it 23-20, and Oregon answers with a solid drive, and with less than 20 seconds left, they tie it up, and we are headed to overtime. I was hoping that one of these games would go to overtime, and I'm honestly surprised it wasn't Georgia. Oregon gets stopped on 3rd and goal on their first possession of overtime, and they settle for a field goal, and with ice in his veins, Will Howard sends the Buckeyes to the Final Four in the 3rd instance of a lower-seeded team winning in the round of 8. And if that wasn't surprising enough, the Sugar Bowl starts with Notre Dame putting up 28 points unanswered on Georgia. Of course, that would only be a surprise if it weren't due to the multiple Carson Beck turnovers. Georgia would mount a comeback and come within 7 of the Fighting Irish, but this game-sealing interception would put an end to the Bulldogs' national championship hopes, and the lower seeds will pull off a clean sweep in the round of 8. So looking at the bracket, I mean, we're looking at the epitome of busted right here. We got a 12 versus an 8, a 6 versus a 7 here in the semifinals. And the college football playoff website didn't really say who goes in the Orange Bowl and who goes in the Cotton Bowl. So we're just going to start with Ohio State versus Clemson, the Orange Bowl, where an absolute barn burner is happening. Will Howard is outside of his mind as he takes this one 30-plus yards all by himself to put the Buckeyes up 24-21. Clemson would kick a field goal to tie before the half, and on their first drive of the third quarter, Phil Maffa would find the end zone to give the Tigers a 7-point lead. After an Ohio State field goal, Maffa would find the end zone again to put Clemson up by 11. Ohio State would score, but they'd miss the 2-point conversion, but it doesn't matter because this final touchdown would be enough to send the 12-seed Clemson Tigers to the first ever national championship in the 12-team playoff era. In the third quarter of the Cotton Bowl, Penn State kicks a field goal to take a 2-possession lead against Notre Dame, and after several more Penn State field goals and a couple of last-ditch efforts from Notre Dame, James Franklin conquers the Mickey Mouse section of the bracket to take Penn State to a national championship. Honestly, and I'm not saying this as a Georgia fan, but if this is what we end up with for a national championship, Penn State versus Clemson, I might stop watching college football. Somehow we find ourselves here for all the marbles, national championship on the line, 6-seed Penn State, 12-seed Clemson. I genuinely don't know who I think is going to win this simulation. This one was honestly rather boring until we got to the second quarter where Clemson finds the end zone to take the 10-3 lead. But Penn State gets the ball back and they answer immediately to make it 10-10 at the half. Clemson tacks on a field goal in the third quarter, and with Penn State driving, Drew Aller throws a pick 6. Khalil Barnes houses this one to give Clemson a 10-point advantage. Each team would tack on a field goal apiece in the third quarter to set up Penn State with their last chance to get back in the game, and Drew Aller would throw another interception. And there you have it. Clemson seals the deal to run the table and win the national championship as the 12 seed in the first ever 12-team playoff in college football history. This was incredibly fun to make, and as you can see, the outcome was absolutely nuts. I had no idea when I started making this video that Clemson was going to be the one to win this thing. I honestly thought Texas was going to beat them in sim, and I honestly, above that, thought that Georgia was going to beat pretty much anybody you threw up against them. So Notre Dame going up by 28 in the first quarter against Georgia is just absolutely bonkers. It's also worth noting just how crazy it is that SMU almost took out Penn State. Penn State was one last-second touchdown away from being gone in the first round, and I can't imagine how different this thing would look if SMU potentially could have been playing for the national championship instead of Penn State. You would have had an 11 versus a 12, and that would have made it even crazier. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. I got a whole lot of cool ideas in the pipeline that are similar to this one, and if you're a fan of this, man, I would love for you to see them. Have a nice day, and I'll see you in the next one.